Hello, welcome to this video. It's Philosophy Saturday and this video is going to be entitled Music and Politics, which is actually a title taken from a tune by the Disposable Heroes of Hip-Hoprisy, one of the great hip-hop groups of all time and a forgotten group as that. As you can see, I'm outside of my studio at the Jellyman's factory, and as you can also see, it's snowing here. Now, this was not forecast today. We've all woken up here in the UK and it's snowing. And what's interesting is that I arrived at the factory this morning and I just thought, let's have a wander down to the old factory, the building behind me, which is called the Rope Building, right? Was the original factory on this site, and it was built in the Victorian era. And that combined with the snow gives a feel of sort of almost like a Christmas carol, isn't it? There is nothing in this shot, except for me, that will be incongruous, 150 years ago, is there? The snow has a transformational aspect. The snow can be seen, I believe, as an act of magic. Now, I grew up in a scientific household. My mum and dad were both technologists, scientists background, and I was brought up with a very sort of materialist view of the world. And I could hear my dad saying to me, "Oh, don't be so silly. This is just water particles that have been blown about within the cloud at a certain temperature, and they fused into ice in a certain way where they fuse together. They've been blown around, and when they become too heavy, they're just dropping out of the sky and landing on the ground." But anybody who wakes up in the morning and opens the curtains and sees the snow from the first time, I believe we all have a very similar feeling. We are all brought together by an aesthetic reaction to this sort of thing. Now, some of you watching this video in hot climates, this could look very strange. That's another aesthetic aspect of this. Anybody here in the UK will be going, "Oh yeah, Andy's out in the snow. I had a problem getting to work yesterday," and all that type of thing. It's the nature informs us. Now, I know, and I've become very aware of this in recent times doing the channel, is that this snow and this factory and all that is here has got nothing to do with me, right? I haven't created it. It's not my, masterpiece. I haven't thought it up. All I've done is spotted the fact that it snowed, and I've come out here, and switched my camera on. And so forever, well, not maybe forever, don't be so arrogant, Andy, but for at least a certain amount of time, it will exist. This morning will exist. We will be able to go back, and the framing device, which is this video, all right, I will be able to look back and go, yeah, that was that morning. That was that morning when it snowed. And I went down to the Jellyman's factory, the old factory, and I got a feeling being there, of being in another time and another place. The snow was transformational. And we know in a rational society there's no such thing as magic. But magic is about transformation. And this is why we get a feeling from being in an environment like this. I've gone back so you can have another look at it. I hope you're capturing it as well. I am overwhelmed by it. The river's passing through. Today is brown and muddy. It's swirling around. It's swelled because of the snow. The snow's coming down pretty. I mean, can you see that? I always love that view. I always love looking up and seeing the snow coming down like that. Nature's an incredible thing, isn't it? And we react to it. And we react in an aesthetic way. And we tease out the good and the bad. I'm not trying really hard to tell you what this means, but I have done a little bit. But you're watching you're getting an aesthetic reaction. And aesthetics is really about what is deciding is good or bad, beautiful or ugly, right or wrong. And I believe our morals start there. If you are a religious person, then you believe your morality comes from something much bigger than us, and I'm quite happy to accept the fact that art is revealing something in the universe. If you're a materialist and you think that there's no God, you know, directing us morally, then you have to think, well, where do our ethics start? And it's the only place it could start is within the arts. It's within the negotiation that goes on. I am at my happiest on this channel when I am talking about aesthetics and creativity, because in a Western liberal democracy that is built upon rational thought, industry, technology, you know, knowing what is true and what is not true, the creative aspects of our existence can sometimes be a little bit forgotten. Now, on this channel, I'm going to be talking politics, and it's going to be based upon certain messages I've been getting online, certain comments I get, and basically what this is going to be about is how I have changed by being in quite, I wouldn't say a unique position, but at least a very strange position of having a YouTube with an audience and regularly talking into my phone as I am now, walking around with my loud boomy voice talking to nobody like a nutter, knowing that there might be people watching this, and how that's affected my view and how it has altered my politics. And with the many comments recently where people are saying, you know, leave the politics out, I don't come here to listen about politics. The thing we're going to be discussing here is whether music and politics mixes. Now, many years ago, a quite political musician said to me, whose politics I didn't agree with, they said, you cannot separate the two. They're interwoven. And I thought, no, it's not. No, it's not. I'm just trying to play my drums and play. But actually now I can see that in getting up here and talking about music and aesthetics and creativity, you have to put forth certain ideas. Those ideas can be contested, they can be accepted or not accepted. But these aesthetic ideas open up the realm of ethics and morality and eventually politics. And that's what we're going to be talking about on this video. So shall we go back into my studio? Now, before I go back into the studio, I was just about to say, shall we go back into the warmth of my studio? But my studio has actually got no heating in. A charity has taken over this wonderful factory and we are trying to create something in here. But one of the things we need is heating. And my YouTube is now attached to that charity. It's called the Jellyman's Heritage Arts Charity. And if you would like to donate, you'll be basically donating to an organisation that is trying to help underprivileged people and people a bit disenfranchised to find a way through creatively, which is something I really believe in. You know, I really believe in the democratisation of creativity, and I don't think it should be just in the hands of the wealthy and the privileged. And there's a bit of leftism politics, and this is what I'm on about. This is what we're talking about. So I would love to say let's go and retreat to the warmth of my studio, but we can't. So I might still have my coat and hat on when we get up there. But let's carry on up there. And this video could be triggering to certain people. What can I do? This is what's in my mind at the moment, and I'm not going to self-censor. I'm not going to let anyone else try and censor me either. So let's get on with it, shall we? So I'm back in the studio, and as you can see, what just happened outside aesthetically is being mirrored on the inside. As much as my videos are about me talking to you, it's a talking head, even with that, there is aesthetic decisions to make. This sort of view you would not normally see on my channel. Normally I like everything higgledy-piggledy and detailed. I like a massive stuff going on in the background. But here I've gone for a very symmetrical approach. I have put my head in the center of the screen, which actually disempowers me in a way. It makes me look weaker, especially if I sit right back like that. I seem to become very weak. If I drop myself down like this, if I was talking to you like that now, it starts to get so weak, it's strange. If I was to be bigger and have my head touching the top, especially if I moved over to here and start to talk to you like that, then that changes your perception of me talking to you. So the position of the camera, the position of myself, the background, all this is affecting how you are perceiving this. So I'm going to get less confrontational, I think, for this one, and I'm going to go back to here. Also, of course, I have been able to utilise in this video the lovely snow, which is pitter-pattering in the background throughout the whole of this, which will give this a certain aspect. Now, in terms of the aspect it's going to give, I'm not too sure whether that's going to be. I haven't got a clue. I'm in control of where I'm sat. I'm sort of in control of what I'm about to say, but I haven't got a plan of what I'm going to say. I'm not too sure where I'm going with this. And the snow, which is like the optional extra that has been provided by God or nature or however you want to see it, fate, is also playing a part to the aesthetics of this video. And that is all going to weave together into a piece of art, and it's going to give you a feeling. And that feeling will be, in some respects, completely subjective to you. You will have your own opinions. You know, if somebody had a traumatic experience in the snow, they might be looking at this going, oh no, I can't watch it, you know. But those who you know, think of times when they're children and the fun of, you know, waking up and seeing the excitement of the snow, which has filled me up a little bit. You can see in my energy I'm quite excited. There's a child in me has woken up. Knew I was going to do this video today, but actually I've been affected by today, you know. I put my silly hat on. I just went down to my kids' school because I had to see them on quite a serious matter. And so I walk into the school and they're all sat there, and I'm going to say, my daughter's not coming, you have trouble, all this type of thing. But I then walked up to the desk and I pulled out these flaps and I put them into that position and then went, oh, sorry, I've just done that so I can hear what you're saying. And they all laughed. Ha, you know, look at him, he's got a silly hat on. And with that, it's sort of, it sort of broke the ice, made the situation different. We all have the ability to do this. And believe it or not, I can actually walk into a situation and try and diffuse any tensions or, you know, conflict that's going on. But the one thing I've learned on YouTube is that people love conflict, okay? Now, I'm a talking head. If I was, you know, was one of these websites where they just get loads of people on of different opinions and then get to shout at each other, I would probably be getting millions of views. But what I do is I am excited and interested to go into contentious areas where some of the audience will disagree and some of them will agree. And that's where the conflict is. People watch my videos and some people are going, oh, Andy's going for that now. And they go, certain people are going to hate that. And then other people are going, oh my God, he's done this and he's done that. And this is really what this video is about today, right? I don't think I could, even though I'm freezing cold, I think I'm going to have to lose the hat. What's the hair like? Oh, it's not too bad. Right, so where are we going with this? Shall we, I've done my introduction, which was basically to talk about aesthetics and how they work. I've done all that bit. Where are we going now? Let's swap over this chat to the immediate, the actual thing that's going on. Let's move away from all the esoteric, ephemeral stuff and get right into where Andy is. This is what he does. This is part two. So, well, oh, Andy's changing now. I'm exposing this in a sort of postmodernist sort of Kurt Weill alienation theory. I'm telling you the way I'm thinking as we go through this. So, here on YouTube, I've had a YouTube for 3 or 4 years now. I've had to learn how to manage it, how to monetize it, how to get views, how to build an audience, how to keep people interested so they watch to the end of the video. And without me trying, I have naturally developed some skills. But in developing those skills, it has changed my outlook on life. If you've ever studied educational theory, you will come across a thing called Kolb's learning cycle. And I think Kolb's learning cycle also works for creativity. And this is like a circle that goes around, and at 12 o'clock is this idea of having new experiences. New experiences promote new vague ideas, right? That's what you saw at the beginning of this video, is these vague ideas. Then we take these ideas and we try and make them concrete, right? And then that will be the bit where we're about to go now. And then I will get to the end of the video, which means I've got to take it home and finish it and edit it or do whatever I want. And then I'm going to have to put it online. And when I put it online, it will go out into the world, and that will provide a new experience as I see the comments and the likes. And, you know, if this gets lots and lots of views and lots of positive comments, then I go, I'll do some more of that. And this is the circle that we go around. And for creative people, it's very important that we do that. Now, in doing that and going around, there will be an internal conflict. There will be a battle with yourself, right? And I believe that as an artist, you need to build some sort of defense mechanism and confidence in what you're doing. So go, right, this is what I do, don't care what anyone else says. And that embodies itself for me in politically in having freedom of expression and freedom of speech. I don't want to feel unencumbered, not because I don't believe in censorship, but I want to be able to come out here and talk and not think, oh, I don't want to upset so-and-so, and somebody might think I'm this. I just want to be able to talk. I want to be able to make mistakes. I want people to be able to put arguments forth, and I will change. That is basically how I politically see the world. That negotiation, I believe, is embodied in jazz, and I love jazz. Now, the thing I love about jazz more than classical music is classical music's wonderful, but it's a bit totalitarian, isn't it? The composer composes his tune, and then the conductor comes out and makes sure the composer's wishes are enacted. And there's a slight amount of expression in there, but on the whole, you've got to deliver what Beethoven wanted, not what you want. And if halfway through Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony, you decide that on violin that an amazing sort of Hendrix blues solo would work, you're not allowed to do that. Now, in jazz, you can. Jazz is a way that people can come together from different backgrounds. You don't even have to be able to speak the same language. You don't even have to rehearse or talk. You know, a jazz musician can walk in to another country and sit down with someone that they can't speak to, and they can start playing a blues that everybody can fall in. But what's incredible is that within that framework, they can express themselves, which are equal in creative brilliance to what Beethoven did. And many people have said this is like a metaphor for America. You know, now that constitution on which America was based had to be there, because America is built upon all sorts of different people from different places. So the normal familial negotiations that go on in countries where you deal with your own people, you couldn't have that in America. They had to bypass it. And in doing that, the incredible thing was having all these different people from these different cultures and different ways of thoughts, because they had to line up with this idea of being an American. And that was, if you allow freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and all that stuff that's in the American Constitution, it will allow you to bring in the best of what you've got, right? So this is the issue of multiculturalism. And multiculturalism, I think, works when everybody that's in that culture signs up to an overarching culture that is basically liberal in its outlook. These ideas were formed here in the UK amongst the liberal philosophers, people like Hume, John Locke, Mill, Bentham, the guy that they mummified and stuck in the college. You know, all these people were negotiating what we could call liberal philosophy. Over in Europe, different philosophical systems were coming out. And in the liberal enlightenment, you had people like Rousseau. And in Germany, you had Hegel. And so these different philosophical ideas emerge, right? So park that as an idea. But my politics are really based upon freedom of expression. And I couldn't come on here if I was self-censoring based upon someone else's opinion of what I should think. And I'm not a fan of that. Now, that is just my position. It can be argued with. So because I come up and just talk and say what I want to think, because I don't censor myself, because I don't stick to the subject, what's happened is this channel has grown a little bit like America. I started off as a YouTuber just ranking albums, but if you compare what I do to all the other guys out there that are doing that, you'll see that my YouTube is completely different, and most of my content is not that. And I'll stray into whatever area I like. One of the people that inspired me greatly was Rick Beato. And Rick Beato, on one of his videos, as when I first set this channel up, he says, I basically get up and I talk about whatever I want. And because he talks about whatever I want, whatever he wants, he does stray into politics. Not as much as I do, but he does stray into politics. And one of the areas that he's strayed into is the issue of copyright, the issue of ownership and who owns something, and the idea that he can create a video which will be championing a certain artist, but then that artist will turn around and censor what he's done and block it based upon the fact that they're claiming ownership of a tiny amount. So we get into a discussion, and that discussion is political. When you create a channel, you are on the end of something that you've never experienced before. So on YouTube, my comments are moderated by YouTube, by the AI of YouTube. So if anybody says anything that YouTube thinks dodgy, right, it will fish it out and it will stick it in a little folder or a little part of YouTube where I can go and have a look at it and decide whether I want that on or not. Now, the ones that it bungs in there, on the whole, are completely innocent. You know, we had a very similar thing when I was working at college. There was a filter on what you could search for on the internet, and I remember we were doing a thing actually on Mary Poppins, and so I googled Dick Van Dyke, and apparently that was not allowed. You weren't allowed to look up for either Dick or Van or Dyke. I think the Van bit was okay. And so this is the way censorship suddenly works. And I read most of them and I go, oh, that's nothing wrong with that, you know, even the ones that are critical, and I'll let them through. Then inside that is the offensive folder, right? And I have developed an almost sort of masochistic, I try and pretend it's not there, and then if I'm feeling bad about myself, for some reason, like a drug addict returning to their addiction, I go and open that folder up. So I've done it this morning. I've grabbed a few of the ones that are just flopping around in the last few days. So this is just not, I haven't chosen these are just the last few days, you know, some comments that have been put up that YouTube censored. I will censor out the swearing, not because I believe in censorship, but because I don't want YouTube to come along and go, he's swearing on his video, and so we've got to block that, you know. So here's one. You are an idiot, and that accent makes you sound like the putz you are. Now, that's just sort of standard insulting comment. I get hundreds of those, right? And what they're doing is that they're not criticising the channel. They're not criticising what they're saying. They're criticising me. They are going for me fundamentally. They're having a go at my accent, right? And saying I'm a putz. I like the word putz, very American insult there. In here are some excellent insults. I'll try and put them out. Some of them are just standard. Putz, I like that. It sounds like I'm being insulted by a 1930s gangster, which I like that, right? Here's another one. You are pointless. You are a dumbass. So again, I'm pointless. Now, that's obviously in a response to me saying, here's a video with these pointless celebrities, and I've gone that. And then they have not liked that. So, you know, the sort of toddler mentality they have. They go, no, you're pointless. You're a dumbass. Right? Here's another one that I think this one is economic and it's simple. And I respect this one. Here it is. This man is an idiot. No explanation why, but he has been able to express his opinion about me in ways that obviously made him feel a little bit better. Right, so there's hundreds and hundreds of these. Right, now let's go up a gear. Here's another one. This racist devil says Lenny Kravitz, but puts a picture up of Terence Trent D'Arby. F this piece of crap. F was me. That he doesn't say that there, right? So this got on a video where when I was going through the pointless celebrities, every single person that I put up was the wrong picture. Now, why would I do that? I tell you why, because I know that videos like that are comedic, that we're having a laugh and we're poking fun at millionaires, you know, just to extract a little bit of humour. And in a very English way, you know, just prod at a few people, you know, just to see them teeter a bit. And when I put the wrong picture up, this goes back to a thing that happened on Top of the Pops. It's very famous here in the UK. Top of the Pops was a music show, and if you got the charts, you went on Top of the Pops, hence it was called Top of the Pops. And the band Dexys Midnight Runners made a song about Jackie Wilson, the soul singer, incredible singer, one of my favourite singers. But the people at the BBC misheard it, and instead of putting a picture of Jackie Wilson in the background of the performance, they put a picture of Jockey Wilson, the darts player. And I find that very funny, and it pulls down Dexy's Midnight Runners of being cool and singing about Jackie Wilson, and it also shows how inept the BBC can be. And I like the fact that here's this guy going on about pointless stuff and I'm ranting and I can't even get the photos right. And of course, as the photos go through, they mount into more and more ridiculous things. So you're waiting, you say, I wonder what he's going to put up next, you know. And I think when I got to Davy Gray, I just put a plate of bacon and eggs or something like this, right? That's comedy. It's got nothing to do with race, right? I promise you. And I'm racking my brains to think how it does. But this person is accused me of being a racist. They've used the term devil to describe me and called me a piece of crap, right? And that person, I believe, is wrong. And what we see here is the emergence of identity politics. Identity politics making people really get the wrong end of the stick, go for the wrong bit, not understand what's going on, and just knee-jerk react because they have an assumption, because there's an ideological position in identity politics that they have not questioned. Here's another one. Andy, you're pointless. You know, when you see the same insult, so people at home are going, oh, I've got a good retort. Oh, I've got a good retort. He's saying people are pointless. I'm going to say he's pointless. Right? So that's fair enough. And then they say, this person says, you need to develop a major drug habit and then commit suicide. Now, I think that's a bit extreme, really. This is what you are dealing with when you get into this position. You are dealing with idiots like this that are quite happy to write stuff like that. And when you're on the receiving end of it, of hundreds and hundreds of comments, I found a few months ago that I was getting quite depressed by it. Even though I didn't believe it, the fact that it was there, and I kept reading it, and getting told this on a subconscious level, I found myself getting very depressed. And the way I got over that was to stand up and go, I'm not tolerating this. Now, the reason I wasn't pushing back against it is because I am a free speech advocate. And I think this person has a right to their opinion, and I will support them in putting that comment up. I have no problem with that. But then there's the personal, subjective, lived experience, phenomenological view of me, where it's actually... It's bringing me down, you know, and it's getting depressed. And I thought, so what I do personally is I have to see that my channel is mine. I am not a political system. And when this comes along, you hit it as hard as you can. You hit it as hard as you can, right? And then you block and you get rid of the person, right? Now, I have to tell you, I have a great... a war going on in myself of whether that's the right thing to do. And if you want to know the answer, I would say, I don't know. Now, this goes back to this idea that I said artists are insecure, they're not sure, and they have to get a sort of strength to stand up and do their thing. So when I sit down on this camera, what you are seeing, which I know is arrogance, and I know I do it, and I try and take the mickey out of it, but I sit before you being like, hey, do this, you know, and all that stuff. But nobody is like that. Nobody is like that. You know, we most people have both these aspects of self-love and self-loathing all swilling around together. Right. Here's another one. Andy, you're a total twat. Now, I like the use of the word twat because I've used it here. It's a good British expression. Somebody the other day from America said, what's the difference between a twit and a twat? And I said, a twit is an idiot, whereas a twat is obnoxious. And in America, in the UK, sorry, to twat someone is also to hit them. So there's a bit more aggression in a twat. But then he says, and also you are a nonce. Again, where is this coming from? And why say something like that? Okay. Here's one more. What's an SHIT list, you pretentious prat? You know nothing about music. And then it says, leaving Elvis off this list is absolutely pathetic. That is countered by people who will go, why we put Elvis on this list? He would just appropriated black music, blah, blah. So do you get the idea of, you know, having a YouTube like this and entering into this world means that you have this on a huge level, all right? So park that. Now, This next message I'm about to read came through last night, and this is not a comment on the YouTube. This was a private message, and it wasn't a private message to my email, which is available on YouTube. It was on my Facebook. So this came into my personal world last night. I don't know this person at all, and I won't say who they are, but I will read it out. And he said this: I've really enjoyed your music content, being a jazz musician myself, but using a picture of Black Lives Matter as a thumbnail to show the worst things ever that you hate was immature and thoughtless. Right? I have got a black daughter, and I know the racism and violence her family have experienced as black people in the UK. I would say racism is at its worst in my lifetime in some ways today. Where are we? Black Lives Matter has a serious message. And when a middle-aged white man uses clickbait comedy for populist laughs for other middle-aged white men, it's a bit sad. I think I'll unfollow the channel that's become more about populist politics than music. It's become a bit of a comedy Lawrence Fox with some jazz thrown in. Now, of course, this is nowhere near as insulting as the sort of horrible insults that I've just read out to you. But this is personal, and it was directed by me on my Facebook account. And I was sat there just about to go to sleep, and this comes through, and I read it. Now, I object to this on a number of reasons, and it promoted this video. Because as soon as this came in, I hit this guy hard. I argued all the points and I put them down as fast as I could. And then once I put that down, I'm afraid I then said, and now I've done that, I'm going to block you. Now, the only reason I'm blocking him is because I do not want to engage on a personal level with this. But I do have a platform. And I think inherent in this, there are things that from my point of view, aesthetically, I think are not good. They're not good for our society. And I want to go through this bit by bit and explain the things that worry me. I have got a thick skin, okay? I know where this person is coming from, and I know that their intentions are good. I know this is a reasonable, decent person that doesn't like racism. But in attacking me like this, it's assuming that I'm not. It's assuming that I'm a racist. And as you can see, I get called racist every single day, okay? Now, let's just go through this bit by bit. First off, he starts, I've really enjoyed your music content, being a jazz musician myself, right? That's great. So I'm glad you like the channel. You're getting something out of it. But using a picture of Black Lives Matter as a thumbnail to show the worst things ever that you hate was immature and thoughtless. This was the thumbnail, okay? So on this thumbnail, you can see we've got spiders, we've got Christmas trees that are covered in red berries, which also symbolize the hemorrhoids that I mentioned on that channel. We have the Foo Fighters that have got nothing to do with the channel, and that was something that just made me laugh, right? There's a whole bunch of people. We have politicians offering a handshake, and we have a Nazi saluting, covering their face, next to somebody with a truncheon, well, not what they call a loud hailer, shouting their political opinions. Now, that person represents the woke people that I had a bit of a dig at. Now, the dig wasn't serious. The dig was comedy. Now, with comedy, what often happens is if you poke fun at something which can be poked fun at, it's not funny, right? It's only funny, and this is one of the bases of comedy, is to poke fun at something that can't stand having the fun poked at it. And this shows that there is something ideological with that thing, in my opinion. Now, I am one of Frank Zappa's biggest fans. I learnt this from Frank Zappa. He would say something about some people or organisational politics, whatever, and he would do it in a way where they did not like it, all right? This is what made him controversial, okay? It's one of the bases of comedy. This is why comedians do this. Now, so the question is, here, Is Black Lives Matter so morally right, and we should not discuss it? We should not discuss this because that they shouldn't be discussed. We get into the realms of like the heretical. We get into the realms of sort of this religious ideology that to criticize God means that you should be executed. Right now, I'm going to tell you a joke about God or involves God now, and it's going to be an offensive joke. So if you don't like offensive jokes or rude jokes, please switch off now. Okay? So this man gets on a bus and he sits next to a nun, and he thinks to himself, I would like to have some sort of, romantic relationship with a nun. Let's couch it those terms. And so he says to the nun, I would like to have romantic relations with you, nun. And the nun says, I cannot do that because I am married to God. I have given myself as a woman to God. Very noble gesture to do that nuns do. They're famous for doing this. And she gets off the bus. And the bloke's frustrated. So he turns to the bus driver who's driving the bus and he says, you know something? I just asked that nun. And she said she's married to God. And he says, well, I tell you something about that nun. He says, every night she goes down to the church at midnight. No one else is there. And she prays to God. Why don't you go down there and pretend to be God? And he thinks, oh, that's a good idea. So he goes down and he dresses as God and he hides behind the thing like this. And the nun comes in, she's like praising, he stands up and goes, hello, I am God. And she goes, oh, God, I would like to have romantic relations with you. And the nun says, well, I'll have romantic relations with you, but we will have to have romantic relations in a way that was favoured by the Greeks. I hope you know what that means. And I am really Englishifying this joke. I think it's funnier for doing this. And so they do. And at the end, he goes, he can't take the fact that he's con the nun. So he whips off the God costume and he says, I had you. I'm not God, I'm the bloke on the bus. And the nun turns around and whips the habit off and says, and I got you, I'm the bus driver. Now, I'm sure you're all splitting your sides at that joke, but that joke is funny because it's got nuns and God in. This is the whole point, right? That's why it's funny, okay? We should be able to poke fun at absolutely anything. So I'm wondering why this guy thinks that Black Lives Matter should be fenced off and not have any fun poked at it, right? Then he says this, I've got a black daughter and I know the racism and violence her family has experienced as black people in the UK. Right, now, let me tell you something. He, in this comment, is about to call me a white middle-aged man. I am a white middle-aged man, and I've been told this by many people all over the world. They have said, you're a white middle-aged man. And some people, Truth Saviour, that rotten YouTuber that decided to have a go at me, right, and I think he originated the idea of calling me a white devil, put a video up where he said, white middle-aged man says jazz is not black music. And this is when I went into that, this is when this kicked up on the channel. But I won't go down there now. I messaged that guy and said, well, my mum's Indian. She was born in Calcutta in 1940 and she came to the UK in 1946. When she arrived in the West Midlands and in 1946, she was one of the first Indian people to ever arrive in Birmingham and experience horrendous racism. The sort of racism that people don't experience, I think, nowadays. Like, for example, her school would forbid her from going to university. And she was told, your sort don't go to university. That affected the whole of her life. I have members in my family that are mixed race. Some of them are actually Indian. And I tell you something I've noticed is that if the genes with me had gone a different way, I would be perceived in a different way. And that shocked me. I thought, when you're in a mixed race family, you start to see what racism really is and how it's completely based upon your appearance, right? And I have been told a number of times when I've said, well, I'm actually mixed race, and they say this You present as white. So all that racial stuff doesn't matter because you present as white. So I can have a go at you. To me, this is absolutely disgusting, and it pushes my button of what I think is racist. So I am not coming at this because I'm a racist and I don't like BLM. I'm going to tell you straight now, I think BLM is racist. I don't like it. Okay? And I said this right from the beginning, because when this first emerged, I felt like this. There is the statement Black Lives Matter, and then there's the organisation. Now, the statement, I don't have a real problem. It's a statement of facts. You know, Black lives do matter, and that should be seen because of situations that are going on. Now, I found that there was contradictions there when this all kicked off, and this is really where all this identity politics enters into the mainstream. I'm not in America. I don't know whether the police are targeting black people on racism or not. Some of my black friends in America have described this to me, and I've accepted that. But in terms of threats to black people, getting shot by the police is not your biggest threat. And it's the same here in the UK. You know, if you're a black person in the UK, you've got a much higher chance of getting stabbed within your community by various things that are going on, right? Now, honestly, I don't want to get too much into this, but that Black Lives Matter is not cut and dried. It's not this religious statement that can't be questioned. We can question it, all right? And the anti-identity politics was to say all lives matter, and then that was branded as being racist. So we get this really strange situation that somebody stating all lives matter is racist, when that statement is about the most unracist statement. But of course, what the other side are doing, they're weaponizing anything that anybody uses against them. This is a thing that totalitarian states do. So you'll take a name for something and you will weaponize it, and you'll say you shouldn't name that. You shouldn't call somebody woke. Shouldn't call someone a social justice warrior. You can't use any of these terms. And the reason is because it ties you up. You're trying to say, well, you know, people that believe in a sort of phenomenological view of truth, that abide by some of the adaptations to Marxism that the critical theorist does, so they're social constructionists and post-structuralists taken from Derrida and Foucault, their intersectionalists, they believe in critical race theory and some of the advancements. You end up trying to say all that to identify somebody which, by a term, woke, which was used by them to identify themselves. And as soon as the opposite people call them that word's a bad word. And we know there's certain words that I just can't say on here, and you know what those words are. And I'm not too sure whether that's right. And I think, you know, I don't want to come on here and get all serious, but what I do want to do is just poke fun at that, right? Because I cannot help but walk into these if I start seriously talking about music. Now, the big thing that exists in philosophy is the subject-object division, right? So we are subjective beings. We experience things in a certain way. The reason I started in the snow, which seems to have stopped now, we're still going a little bit. The reason I started in the snow is because the snow is a materialist thing. We understand what it is, water, and it's formed into these crystals, and it's laying on the ground. We know that. That's the objective view of it. The subjective truth, it's full of all this magic and wonder and whimsy, and it's full of like these aesthetic feelings, and it has metaphors for this and just like that, and purity and this and that, and transformation and a new life. You know, somebody could have opened the curtains this morning, seen the snow, and gone, you know, I am going to change my life, right? That is the subjective, all right? And identity politics has a big part of it is based upon the phenomenological idea of truth. This is truth that has been determined by your subjective experience. It is my lived experience that blah, 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 right? Now, that is useful in the realm of art, but once it goes beyond art, it starts causing problems. That's my opinion. And I'm trying on this video to show how that is and why that is, right? I watched a film last night. I can't remember the title it was. I think it was called and it was basically a horror film of this black guy that goes to stay at this White House, and they basically try and chop his brain out or something. And it was a pushback against what I'm saying. It was an artistic pushback against colourblindness, basically, as a way of dealing with racism. I enjoyed the film, I accepted it, and I learnt something because it was within the aesthetic realm. And I feel the artist has a right to do that. And I got feelings from it that could help me see what it's like to be on the other side. But once that gets political, once we start basing truth on phenomenological truth, our truth categories fall apart, right? And I think this is what's going on here, because the truth is being ignored, right? I've critiqued the statement Black Lives Matter. But I don't really have a problem with that, and I believe people should say it, right? The person in the thumbnail happened to have that on their T-shirt, which I hadn't actually noticed, right, when I put it on there. So it wasn't an artistic decision. I just got somebody that looked a bit woke. So the next bit of this is the Black Lives Matter, the organisation. So when this first emerged, I went, what's this? So I went over to their website, as I do, and I checked out and I read who they were. And they had identified themselves as Marxists. And they had this sort of communitarian Marxist approach to race, which it also brought in sort of gender, LGBTQI things and all that type of stuff. They really felt that the sort of the idea of the nuclear family that exists within capitalist society, that needs to be destroyed. Now, I have no problem with them saying all that. But I'm afraid I just don't agree with it. And I don't want to live in a world where I'm not allowed to not agree with it. So when people said to me, you know, what do you think of BLM? Do you agree with it? I go, no, I've gone to the website and read it and I don't agree with any of it. Right? They're not Nazis. They're not totalitarian, but they are Marxists. Now, Marxists that exist in Western culture, I know them so well. I've known many of them, you know, and I tell you something, they never give their capital away. That's the one thing they never do. And in the case of BLM, this rang true. The money that they made through donations seems to have gone off into all sorts of different weird places, buying mansions, paying off relatives and all that type of stuff. Now, of course, I did think, shall I go through that bit by bit and be like a political YouTuber? You can Google it if you want. Right, and you will find it again, because of the political argument, somebody was saying they didn't do anything wrong, and other people say no, they embezzled hundreds of millions of pounds and bought themselves mansions and all that type of stuff. Right, but the point I'm trying to make here is the very whiff of that, the very whiff that certain BLM members have actually gone off shooting guns. They've been done for attempted murder, and they've used those funds to get bail for these people. Right, there's a whole bunch of stuff there, which even if not true, right, I'm just trying to be right fair down the middle, because I'm not saying it is not true. These things could be true as well, right? But however you see it, BLM should be able to be criticised, because if there is a chance that that money that was donated was spent to buy themselves, you know, $5 million mansions, right? If that is the case, and that video that they put out, which I'm sure they've got rid of now, when the three women who run BLM was clinking their glasses, sat in their massive mansion saying, look what we've achieved, which I remember watching thinking, well, it seemed right for Marxists to be like this. You know, oh, we've had to buy ourselves a base. You know, it's a mansion. You know, it's got a recording studio in it. It's like, they are, you can have a go at them. I can use BLM for comedy purposes if I wish. And when we get into a place where certain people are telling me that I shouldn't, and the reason why I shouldn't is because I'm white and middle class, it is not me putting out the totalitarian talk. Now, I know this guy is basically, he's got a black daughter. He's seen racism. He doesn't like racism. Well, I tell you, mate, neither do I. But this is not the solution. I do not think this is the solution. And I think creating this sort of revolutionary Marxist division of having identity groups where you're either in the right one or you're not. And if you're in that one, you're absolutely right. And if you're not, that speech has to be taken down because you know you are categorically in the right. I think promotes a certain way of thinking towards identity groups. So remember, there's more than one identity groups. You know, what do I call them? These types have dealt with that with intersectionality. And intersectionality doesn't work. We get into a situation where one identity group, like women, are looking at another identity group, like trans people, say, well, hang on, you're affecting our rights. And then, gay people are saying, well, you're also affecting our rights. And then black people say, well, I don't actually agree with any of this, but you're saying you're the voice for me. And this is all going on because intersectionality doesn't work. And the reason is because there's all sorts of different identity groups. And the idea of the left should be, and it's something that I agree with, there should be wealth redistribution based upon wealth, not identity. Because if somebody is unprivileged, we can collect them all together and we can forget the fact that they're black or gay or trans or women or whatever it is, disabled, fat, whatever it is that you want to put those groups in. If they're underprivileged, they will be in that we have no money group. And that's what you should concentrate on. And the way that works is by looking at that group and saying we won't judge anybody based upon identity because we don't want our wealth redistribution to go to the millionaire black people, the millionaire gay people, which is where it's going right now. Because the left is not the left. BLM is not really BLM. This is why they are siphoning off the money for themselves, right? I really believe this. Right now, people can argue with me. They can say I'm wrong, and I welcome it. But do not have a go at me by saying I'm middle-aged, or I'm white, or I'm British, or anything to do with identity, because you are still doing what the racists do, right? You have to deal with people's arguments, right? I do not agree with BLM. I don't agree with them, right? I think that some of the things they stand for and the division that they sow, the thing in this thing which is telling for me is this guy says racism has got worse. Yes, it started getting worse in 2013. They have measured this. It started getting worse in 2013. The civil rights movement that started in the 60s was incredibly successful, right? When that was going on, James Brown did a song where he says, I don't want you to give me nothing, which is a double negative, but you know what it means. Open up the door, I'll get it myself, right? James Baldwin spoke of colourblindness, of not wanting to be seen as an Afro-American, but to wanting to be seen as American, as a person that has been in that country as long as the country has been there and has gone through this movement and wanted to be treated like a man, not a black man. Now, there are people out there that in me saying that will be calling me a racist for saying that. And I have to stand my ground. And the reason is, and I tell you why, because on here I talk about music, and the fundamental base of all this is jazz and blues, right? I am a jazz and blues musician. I cannot play classical music. I play jazz and blues and music forms that have come out of that music. Within that, the great maligned geniuses are black musicians. Not all. There's geniuses that are white musicians, and they are maligned for being white. The same thing happens now because of the identity politics brigade, putting their spin on it. I have gone deep into this because I have wanted those musicians to be treated and thought of as the geniuses they are. And I have wanted to be able to just step out of a lens, which I have myself because we've all been brainwashed by this, to be able to step out the lens and see these as genius musicians, not innate talent, not because of their culture, not because of some connection to Africa, not because of that, because nobody does that to Mozart, nobody does that to Van Gogh, nobody does it to Michelangelo, nobody does it to Shakespeare. They are seen as unique geniuses, and their genius is seen as being something which it belongs in them. It's their view, their personal revelation of what exists in the world, what I spoke about at the beginning of this video, and they are treated in that way. But jazz musicians are never treated in this way, right? There is always a spin, and this spin started in the 1980s. I've gone through this on this channel in massive depth. Right, it is one of the fundamental reasons I'm here, is to champion the individual, their freedom of expression, their freedom of speech, to say that you are allowed to express yourself. You're not part of an identity group. You don't have to think a certain way. You don't have to adhere to the mainstream narrative that's been pushed out by the mainstream media. And when you have a channel like this, you suddenly realize, I'm looking at actual mainstream media radio programs and I'm beating them. I'm looking at television programs. I'm beating them on the views sometimes. There's an audience here and I have a responsibility into this. And my moral responsibility is to tell the truth as I see it and adjust my opinion based upon the comments I get, which are counteracting the arguments I say. Now, when somebody argues with me, I am going to robustly argue against it. And many people are going to say, yeah, you can say all this, Andy, but you never change your opinion. You always argue. There's a number of opinions I have changed on. I am not actually going to relay them here because I know they're so political that this would cause a meltdown. Everybody with a YouTube video that's got an audience knows, as I knew when I was teaching in colleges, there are things we cannot talk about. They're not wrong to talk about. They're not evil. They will not promote violence, but you will still be targeted for talking about them. We know this is the case. In a Western liberal democracy, there will always be taboos, right? The 1960s broke many of those taboos, which is what gave all these identity groups that were at that time being, and still are being prejudiced based upon their identity. But the way that was tackled was by treating them, each one of them, as an individual and listening to their voice, right? Their individual voice. And what happens with the arts is the arts puts across a feeling, an emotion, all right? And that emotion, then if you're a human being, which we all are, you feel it. It promotes a unity and you get to see someone else's point of view. I think I've tried to explain my political position. I've tried to explain how I believe art and politics are interrelated and why it will come up on this channel, and push back a little bit against certain comments so I don't have to keep sitting there on the night typing and typing. If you do like Philosophy Saturday videos, if you felt you got something out of it, please put a like on it. And I'll tell you something, if nobody watches these videos and they don't like them, I'll stop making them. I really will. I just do the stuff that the vast majority seems to get something out of. And if one thing I can get across on this video, if you're a creative person, don't be afraid to express yourself and express your view of the world. And the avant-garde and the innovative does not come from parroting the mainstream narrative. It comes from you seeing the world in a unique and novel way. And anything that puts a limit on that expression, in the end, does a disservice to us all, black, white, gay, whatever, as human beings. I am here to promote unity. That's what I believe in. I think that's what music does. I've spent a whole life teaching music and I really believe that I've seen that. It brings people together and it binds people in this sort of realm of love and beauty. And I wish that upon you all. And the guy that sent this message, I know you come from a good place. I know your intentions are good, but do not assume that I am countering this or taking the mickey out of it because I have bad intent. I might have wrong intent, but you need to deal with the arguments that I'm saying and you need to deal with that. But the biggest mistake you made was to think that for some reason BLM is so morally absolutely right that for some reason nobody should use them for comedy. That is totalitarian and it's wrong. And I'm afraid in the same way you react to the racism that your daughter has, I react to that way of thinking deeply. And I see it as prejudice. Thank you all. Go in peace and in love. And if you really are full of love and unity, stick a like on my video now and subscribe and join the family where we're all unified by beauty and love. And if you really want to express your beauty and love, you can part with cash, by joining my Patreon. The link is down below, but you can become a free member. But if you just want to give me randomly cash out of your feelings of love that I've evoked in you, I have a PayPal tip jar. I now feel like a proper religious leader, fleecing the flock for cash. Oh, I knew I'd get to this point at some point. What's the snow doing like? It's stopped. It's all over. This little window of wonder. The window of wonder. I now realise what this means. I've just been able to interpret my own video. A little bubble of magic that we went into, and now it's over. We went back into the real world. Off you go into the real world. Hope you have a good day today. Put me some nice comments up. Argue with me where I'm wrong. I'm sure I'm wrong somewhere. I'm trying my best, right? I am trying my best to get to the truth. Tell me where I've gone wrong and we'll have a nice discussion. But don't insult me, right? I don't want to be called a twat.
Honey, your script back and everything intact. What is this last chapter about? He said, you have to figure it out. The state of you, the state of your attraction. He said, the state of you, look at that view. The state of your attraction in me. The wire winds a change. Direction is a maze. Follow as we go, 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 go. And my house is a state. Everybody sees the same. All that they know, no, no, no. The state of you, the state of you, the state of the uttermost attraction. The state of you, the state of your attraction, he said.